Welcome to Those Are My Thoughts podcast, where we share our thoughts on popular fantasy reads. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jillian, and this is a fun intro episode. Welcome to Those Are My Thoughts. Welcome to our podcast. I'm so excited to be here. And I feel like it's so fun to be officially marking the start of this podcast. We've been kind of working on this for quite a few months now. So to be kind of at almost release time, or by the time this is out, release time, is so exciting. And I feel like I'm looking forward to this year. When we're recording this, it's January 2nd. So it's very beginning of 2025. We both have big reading goals this year. And I think I'm just excited to see this podcast through and read some incredible books this year. How do you feel, Sarah?
Me too. I read 39 books last year, which for me, and I'll share in this episode, but I don't think I had ever read more than 5 books a year. Maybe, that's pushing it. So I read 39 books, and that's ridiculous for me. So I set my goal to 50.
I did as well.
For me, that still sounds ridiculous. I know I see people all the time I read 60 books, 70, 80, and I'm like,
I
well
see people who are
done.
like, I read 215 books this year. And I'm like, and the thing is, if you are looking for that level of reading in this podcast, you haven't found it here.
We love you. You are welcome here, but
Please stay. Don't leave. Give us some grace because we are new into the fantasy world-ish. We'll get into it, but we are new into the fantasy world as of right now. And it's like this thing where our hearts are just starting to bloom. It feels like we're just the very beginning. We've each read the majority of the books I read last year. I read 28 books last year, and the majority of the 28 books I read last year were fantasy books. And
yeah.
it still feels like we're just scraping the surface of the romantasy series that we're getting into. So we are filling up our schedule already this year. We can't even keep up with our TBR of what we want to read. And it's so exciting to be in this place. Part of the reason that we're starting this podcast is because we have both talked to so many people since we have started reading books and posting about them on social media. So many people are in the same situation we are, which is we don't know where to start. Where do we go? What do you mean start reading fantasy? And it's start here and then, we'll have a place to go.
Another reason is you and I are both finding, which is how we started talking, but we're both finding so many people who are like, you read that book too? I don't know anybody else who reads that book. Please let me talk to you about the person who died or the thing that happened or the ending. That is a huge reason why we're here recording as well, because every single time we post what we're reading on social media, I swear I get a new book friend who's like, that's next on my list.
Or I started reading because of you, or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
that's always, if every single person, if you're thinking oh, she read that forever ago, she probably doesn't want to see my message about it. I do. I want to see your message about it. Please message me about it. And message me every single thought. There's no boundaries. Text me every single thought as you're reading every sentence.
Doesn't matter the time of day.
If I don't get back to you right away, sorry. But honestly, I want to hear every single thought. It literally lights my world up when people text me about this stuff. When someone's like, oh, I just started reading Fourth Wing. And I'm like, what are you thinking about this person? What are you thinking about that person? How do you feel about this? Oh, it's my favorite. It brings me the most joy in the world.
I have a friend who just started Fourth Wing. She's never read fantasy. I think that she got to chapter 10 or something. And she's like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And I'm like, okay. This is we've prepared for this. This is okay. However, keep going. Try a little more. It'll be okay.
And we recognize okay, Sarah and I are both the kind of people that immediately made it our entire personality. I recognize not everybody is that way. It's hard for me to understand that because I did that so easily. Was this is all I'll ever think about again, and chasing the feeling of the first time I read Fourth Wing or whatever, or you for ACOTAR. But it's one of those things where I was like, no, I'm going to keep going forever until I run out of books now, I think. I don't think I'll ever stop.
I remember that when I finished ACOTAR, and then once I finished all of Mass Verse, that I kinda got scared, and I was like, "At the rate I'm reading, there aren't gonna be enough books. Like, what's gonna happen when I read all the good romance fantasy books that really take me to that next world feeling? What's gonna happen?" And then thankfully, I found you, and we started reading together.
And I also think, like, both you and I, we send each other TikToks constantly where it's like, "Oh, here's somebody recommending this one or that one or this one." Like,
Yes.
my favorite books from 2024, and, like, half of them I've never even read or maybe even heard of, like, does feel like there's this kind of endless supply of untapped, like, amazing authors out there writing incredible stories. I think, even outside of fantasy, I have a bigger goal of reading outside of that genre, like, for fun this year. Like, whether or not we talk about it on the podcast, like, for me, I want to read some other genres. I know you already kind of do. I focused mostly on fantasy last
Yeah,
year.
yeah. I try to include some autobiographies and leadership things every once in a while, mainly
Or a
audiobooks.
romance or get into historical fiction or something like that. Like, that's what I wanna do this year is kind of, like, get involved into that. So, like, it's gonna be a really fun year, and if you stay till the end of the podcast, we'll tease some of the books we're gonna go through on the podcast this year, which
In
I'm
2025.
so excited about. Yeah, so this episode, we're just going to talk through how I fell in love with books, why we're making this podcast, how Sarah fell in love with books, and how we got together to make this podcast. Like, why the heck are we living in two different states and are making a podcast right now?
How did this happen?
We're glad you're here. Hope you enjoy this ride, and welcome to Those Are My Thoughts.
Be our book friend. Message us your thoughts, follow us on social so that we can be book friends.
I love it so much. Okay, so I have always known I've enjoyed books, but I've never been like super I never know where to start. I don't know if you go into like a bookstore, but it feels really intimidating for me to go into like a Barnes and Noble. You're like staring at a million backs of books. And I kind of am one of those people who, if I don't know if it's gonna be good, I'm scared. I don't want to pick it up. Like, I don't want to waste my time a little bit. Like, that's kind of my personality on it. So like I just never picked up books for a lot of years. In high school, like I read Twilight when it came out with everybody, and I read it like devoured like all 4 books in like 2 weeks or whatever. I went to all the midnight releases of all those, and I read Hunger Games, and I don't even remember. But then those are fantasy, which I don't think I even really like realized at the time, like, this is fantasy I'm reading. When people were like, "Oh, do you like fantasy?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't think so." Then I'm like,
Exactly.
"Wait, what is Twilight if not fantasy?"
And also, like, everyone watches fantasy movies, it's not that far out of a concept.
I had a friend. The reason that this started is back in December of 2023. I had a friend who had taken a whole day off work to read Iron Flame. And I was like, that's a bit much. Like, I remember thinking, that's so intense for
Oh,
a
how the
book release.
tables have turned.
Speaking of taking a day off for a book release in a couple weeks. So I was like, oh, what's that? And she was like, oh, Fourth Wing's the first one. And it's really good. And like, I think later that day, I was at Target, and there was, right by the checkout, they have like some of those books, and they had the stickers that are like 20% off. Like, I have no idea what a good deal is on a book. Like, I don't ever look at that stuff. So I didn't even really know, but I was like, oh, 20% off. Like, put it on the cart. I just put it in my thing, and I went through, bought it. It was right around Thanksgiving time. I was like, oh, maybe I'll read this in my free time around Thanksgiving when we have some time off or whatever it is. And so I started reading it, and it was kind of not like slow at first, but like I kind of like dilly dallied my way through the first 100 pages or so. And then I went on a bachelorette trip. Context, I have 2 babies. And so it's hard to like find the time to read. It's not like I have a lot of extra time. I work full time. I have 2 little boys. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. There's a lot of mom time outside of work time, and that leaves this much time for reading time, especially when I haven't been used to prioritizing it. But I went on this bachelorette trip, and I read on the plane. I read like 200 something pages. I could not put the book down. I read the entire time I was I read in the Uber on the way to the Airbnb afterwards. Like, I couldn't stop reading this book. When I got to the Airbnb where the bachelorette party was, I remember thinking, like, someone was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "I'm at Best Guyeth. I'm not in this room right now." Like, I was physically there and mentally completely not there. And I was like, what is happening to me? My whole like world is changing in this moment. I got home quickly finished the book like within a day or two after I got home. And I had like, it ends on a cliffhanger, which I won't give away. I will make this as spoiler free as possible.
This was Iron Flame or Fourth Wing that you were ending?
Fourth Wing
Okay.
ends on a cliffhanger. And I remember I like looked up and I was supposed to be working, but I was reading. And my husband was working across from me and I was like, I need Iron Flame right now. I was like texting people. I was like, who has Iron Flame? Like, I was like, I'm going to go to the store. I'm just going to go to the store and buy it. Like, I literally was getting in my car. Like, and this was like 30 minutes after I finished Fourth Wing. And my husband, my sweet husband, realized that I had like liked it so much. So he bought me Iron Flame for Christmas, which was in 3 weeks from then. He thought there's no way she's going to like be this feral for a book after she finishes. She'll wait 3 weeks till Christmas and be excited to get it. So he goes into the garage and pulls out a Christmas present and it's Iron Flame and he let me open it early and I like ripped into the book that day. And after I finished Iron Flame, I had the world's biggest book hangover in the world. And I remember I posted on my Instagram, I was like, what do I do now? And people started messaging me, read ACOTAR. I started looking up all the fan art on TikTok. I'm like, I'm eating up the meme content. Like, I just have to like look at every single thing I can possibly look at. And all those amazing pictures of Xaden. The AI of Xaden is so good.
It is. It really is.
It's so good. Anyway, then people told me to read ACOTAR and I was like, okay. So, before Christmas, I go pick up the first book and I'm like, okay, like this has got like big shoes to fill for me, So then I start reading and I got like into it 100 pages in. I'm like, okay, I'm into this. Like,
oh, okay. Okay.
I feel like some people give the first book a lot of flack.
I was into it as well, obviously. I'll share my story in a second, but
anyway, so I start posting more about books on my story as I'm reading them. So I get through all of ACOTAR and I post on my story that I am finishing and leaving those characters behind, which was just as emotional for me, actually, probably a little bit even more than Fourth Wing, because Fourth Wing's not finished yet. It feels like the story is not finished. And neither is ACOTAR, but it felt like more final in the book 5, finishing like you kind of are like, okay, I don't know where this story is going now. That kind of wrapped up a little bit. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm saying goodbye to these characters and figuring out what else to do with my life. I posted it on social media and one Sarah Burgos saw that post.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like, it's so funny because the way that Sarah and I got connected was kind of VMB posting, but Sarah and her husband went to Bible college with my husband years ago, back in like 2015, 2016, something like that. So I went to Sarah's wedding without knowing to her literally at all. I was just, at the time, my husband's girlfriend that got a +1 invite to her wedding.
And then almost a year later, you got married?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But we couldn't go to your wedding because we were broke.
So for context, I live in Tennessee and Sarah lives in Arizona. I almost just said Phoenix, so we don't live near each other at all. And we don't really know each other that well before this book thing happened. So this has been such a God thing bringing us together. Like, I think just such an amazingly orchestrated year of friendship, which like has brought so much light into my life this year. And I mean, I've made so many new friends or reconnected with old friends from posting about these books and just seeing what people think. And we already kind of touched on that, but like it has been such a blessing to like reconnect with people over this stuff. It's like the great uniter to me. I love it so much.
I agree. I've talked to so many people recently where I'm like, wow, is this what coming into your adult years is? Like finding your hobbies that you love and then making friends from that place. Yes, I think it is. And I
Yeah,
think
it
people
is.
told us all along, but like most things, I need to experience it before I get it. Wow, I get it now. Like having that shared experience, there's nothing else like it. It's just such quick, easy friendship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
friendships are easy, but the coming together.
I think you kind of realize like if you're into that and I'm into that, we're probably similar people. Like,
Or we can have different opinions.
yeah. But if we like similar books, we probably like, I don't know. It's just kind of that like, it was like this automatic thing, too. With you and I, like, it's not like it wasn't instantaneous because there was a lot of like, we didn't even have each other's phone numbers when we started kind of DMing about it. And then she read Akatar when I was starting Throne of Glass.
Yes.
Since it takes me
However,
longer to read things with two
yeah.
babies.
Well, also, I was on my high of my very first fantasy book, and I read all of ACOTAR. Is ACOTAR 5 books?
Akatar's 5 books.
Okay. I read all of ACOTAR in 3.5 weeks, and those books are like 500, 700 pages. So I flew, and then the next time I message you, I'm basically like, "What do I read now?" And you're like, "Well, I'm reading Throne of Glass." I'm like, "We're reading Throne of Glass."
Yeah, and I also think you were like wanting to stick with Sarah J. Maas at the time because you had such a
Yeah.
good time with Akatar, so you were down to stay with her for a minute instead of a
Yeah.
departure. We started kind of reading at the same time. It was like I was before her, and then she caught up to me, and then she passed me at some point.
You were at Thanksgiving time, I was in March, end of March. So multiple months later, but
Yeah, that's true.
I just got obsessed quick.
But like it was one of those things where when we started reading together, so like after we finished Throne of Glass, well, she finished Throne of Glass and then read Fourth Wing. And while she was reading Fourth Wing, I finished Throne of Glass. So like we kind of caught up to like, okay, we've now read
The same
exactly the same
books.
books. So we finished those and then we like looked at each other. You DM'd me and said like, okay, like what are we reading next? I was like, well, I heard about this one. And so we read Serpent and the Wings of Night together.
Oh, highly recommend.
Literally, we were like chapters or something into this book. I like messaged you and I was like, Sarah, like I'm literally checking my DMs like every other hour to see if you messaged me about this book. Why don't I have your phone number? So we just started texting and then we just started actually kind of right away we started voice noting about it.
I think the very first time you texted me, I responded with a voice note and I said, "Hey, I get that some people really hate voice notes. However, I have a lot of things to tell you right now. So by the end of this voice note, which is probably like 2 or 3 minutes, you just let me know if you don't like this. I won't do it again, but I got a lot to say."
Oh
And
my
they haven't
gosh.
stopped since.
No. The voice notes are constant. Like at some point Sarah was like, listen, we don't have to, but we're already talking about it literally constantly. We're reading the same books, and we finished Serpent and the Wings of Night, that whatever is out from that series at the time, and then we read Crescent City together, and that was so crazy to read that series. And if you read that series,
I'm still recovering. I don't
we finished the second book, House of Sky and Breath, within 30 minutes of each other. And if you know the ending of that book, it was no words.
I will forever have the image in my brain. I'm just pacing my kitchen. I think I'm trying to find, like, mindless tasks to do while I wait for you to finish, or did I I don't know who
You finished
and
first.
I think I'm, like, heating up tea, I'm putting dishes away, and my phone's just on the counter, and I'm just looking at it every 2 seconds, and I'm just pacing, waiting for Jillian to tell me that she's finished,
Oh my
and then
God.
we didn't shut up for probably 45 minutes.
That was the best. She's like, that is the new goal, is to try to finish that close together. And so what's nice is like it's pushed me, reading with Sarah has pushed me probably to read more often, prioritize it more than I would have otherwise, especially getting through some of these fantasy books. Like we know, like look at all of the Crescent City series. They're like like chunks. If you don't have something motivating you to get through every second of that, and to be fair, I didn't need that much motivation. Like they were incredible books. I don't understand any hate that Crescent City gets. I am on the Stan train forever. But I get that those are intimidating to look at or even get through, especially maybe at the beginning of the book when you're trying to like get the story started again. But it was nice to like have somebody else to hold me accountable to keep reading.
Highly recommend. It's so fun. I mean, I read all of ACOTAR and some of Throne of Glass and Fourth Wing and Iron Flame without you in a sense, and reading books with you, it's no. It's 2 different experiences, and I will always highly recommend with somebody versus without. It's
I
so
agree.
fun.
So how'd you get here, Sarah?
Okay, my reading journey started it wasn't with ACOTAR, my reading journey started with Harry Potter. So I had a friend who no longer lives in Arizona, but she often talked about the Harry Potter books, and at that point, I still had the perspective of, like, I'm not a reader, I don't read. I love TV shows and movies, that was kinda my thing when I had extra time. Not a reader, and so every time she would talk about it, I'm like, "It sounds really cool, but there's no way you're ever gonna get me down to read" how many books? 7, 9? I don't know, and they're huge books. At some point, I don't remember why, but I finally picked them up, and I devoured them. I had no concept that you could have something so magical in my adult life, like, I completely believe in positive escapism, so going to Disneyland or I don't know, like, setting yourself up for fun in life. That's
Yes.
what it was. That's what
Yes.
Harry Potter was for me, and I didn't know that mentally you could escape to these magical lands, and it oh my god. I had already seen all the movies, so reading the
Mhm.
books, I was like, "There is no way that I'm having this much fun with a book." And I already know what's to come, like, I already know the ending. Couldn't believe it. What's really funny is my husband is a Harry Potter fan, not like a crazy, but he likes it. But he's never read the books, he's seen the movies, and so probably every other chapter, I would be putting my book down and be like, "No, no, no, you don't get it. You don't understand Harry Potter." You know? Like, what's in the book and what's in the movie and, like, everything with the
I'm
elf.
connected now. You know nothing about this man. I know
You don't know the
everything.
story.
Yeah.
So that started my obsession.
Again, back to your whole personality immediately.
Like, I didn't get any tattoos, but straight away, I was
I'm
like,
close. I'm
I know.
close. It's on the table. It's on the table for sure.
So, for my birthday last January, my husband surprised me by going to Universal, to Harry Potter Land, or I don't know what it's called, I always call it that, and I had the time of my life. The rest of Universal was weird in my opinion, but Harry Potter Land, time of my life.
So magical.
So fast forward, and I finished Harry Potter, and I'm on a book hangover, and I this was the pinnacle to me. So I'm like, surely there's nothing else out there where I'm going to get this high of escapism to this different magical land that in my brain exists. And I'm on social media one day, and Jillian posts, she's just finished reading Silver Flames, the last book of the ACOTAR series so far. Come on, Sarah J. Maas.
My man, my man, my man.
And you posted I'll put it the screenshot here, but you posted, like, saying goodbye to these characters for now, and to me, that was the feeling
Yeah.
of me leaving Harry Potter, so for you to say that, I was like, "No, no, no, that's what I need, that's what I'm searching for." So I screenshotted, and I don't know about you, but it was so confusing to me to figure out, like, what is book 1, what is book 2, what is this? And so I did research, figured out that this is the ACOTAR series, and I started book 1. I bought it for myself, probably at a Target, and we were going on a road trip to a friend's birthday party up north, and it was my book for the road trip, and I devoured that book every down moment on the couch, family time, like, whatever, and on the car ride there and back. For me as well, like, book 1, there was no down moment. I was obsessed from the beginning. I know a lot of people don't enjoy book 1. I understand, but I don't relate.
Yeah.
I was in.
I
I wasn't
agree.
Tamlin obsessed, but I was happy for Tamlin.
Go read it and make your own decisions about the characters.
And then talk to us about it.
Man, I love book 1 texts about ACOTAR though. There's nothing more satisfying than when somebody texts you about book 1.
Book 1 texts ACOTAR and book 1 texts Fourth Wing, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Listen, this is part of, like, we are launching this because we love to talk about this, but we're all launching it when we are because Onyx Storm is coming out this month, and I know everybody is so excited to read this book, and Sarah and I are in the middle of our reread right now, and if you haven't read Fourth Wing, if you need somebody to look you in the eyes and look at me. If you're looking at YouTube, I'm looking at you. Start it now. Start it now.
Come on, people,
If you
come
need
on.
someone to convince you, if you like Harry Potter, if you like the concept of magic at all,
If you liked The Hunger Games, if you ever liked Twilight, if you like any
Listen,
of these
because
things.
somebody today, I was talking to somebody today about it because I was reading Iron Flame at work while I was there. And they were like, oh, and I was like, you should read this book. It's so good. And she looked up the synopsis. She was like, a war college for dragons? Like, and I was like, don't,
Stop right there.
don't you dare try to make this sound so lame.
We listen and we don't judge.
Literally. I had to be like, no, no. If you can think that 12-year-olds going to a wizarding college or wizarding school in London is normal, then you can like this
Exactly.
war college for dragons. Like, and when I tell you, you will wish you were there. Like, I was in workouts afterwards pretending I was training for the gauntlet. Like, I was.
This was me with Throne of Glass. I was on my runs. I was doing my workouts as Aelin. Yes,
You were training with Rowan. I understand.
I
Yes.
was.
I feel like it's one of those things where you're gonna like wish you were there. Just let it envelop you and your world. But that book is good on a first read. A reread? Unbelievable.
I have something to say. So I just finished my listen up.
We're already on the podcast, Sarah. You don't have to raise your hand.
Sorry. It's really exciting. I just finished my reread of Fourth Wing, like you, and we were on a road trip as I was getting to the end. There's no spoilers here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting to the end. I've already read it, so I know, all right, something's about to happen. And I look to my husband like I try to do anytime the book is like, I need to pay attention and I do not want to be interrupted or taken away from this magical world for the next 20 minutes. Like, please no, if possible. So I look to him and I'm like, hey, just so you know, my book is, without using too many descriptive words, I'm really in it right now. And he looked at me and he was like, you've already read this. I was like, excuse you. Yes, I
And
have. However, still emotional.
it
Still
is.
have emotions here. I'm still human. But perfect example of like non-reader. He was like, I will say non-fantasy reader. He will correct me. He reads books, but
We're still on the train of getting these husbands to
one
eventually
day
read
we
these
will
books.
report back. What I want to share is once I found the magical world, I had messaged you. And then, like you already said, I read what I did, you read what you did, and eventually we started reading together. For me, I didn't understand how books could bring friendship, and I think that's been my biggest takeaway from this last year is, like, having a friend in you now, which is ridiculous, literally because of social media and because of books. We've never hung out in person before. I mean, you were at my wedding, but we didn't hang out.
Yeah, that's true.
We have no memories together at my
Yeah,
wedding.
we don't.
So I think it's hilarious. I also think it's beautiful God
I do too.
timing of how it's happened. And I completely agree with you with like the people that have come back up in my life where one, I'm like, I didn't know you were into these books. And two, now we're reunited and friendships are blooming everywhere. I think it's so beautiful.
I do too. And I think more than that, more than just the friendships around me, because that has been such a big blessing about this too. But like, we both probably have felt this way, which is like, these books are kind of healing other things for us too. Like, for me, there's so much, like, even the smut aspect to me has been like weirdly healing in our marriage and own sex life and things like that. And like, I don't want to make this podcast like overly X-rated when we talk about scenes like that, because that's not really my nature anyway. But that part of it too, and also just like the strength in the female characters and all the things that they overcome and the way that they thread their lives together, it's so beautiful. And I think there's so much beauty in all of these books. Like, there's so much beauty in the love stories and the found family and the friendships that are in every single one of these books that like just like it gets me. And I think it's so fun to read it with friends, but, like, these books are bringing so much to my life anyway. Like, I
Mhm,
just wanna
mhm.
talk about them, and I want other people. I think part of the reason we're talking about it now, and part of the reason I'm so loud about it on social media, is because to me, like, I want everyone to experience this. Like, I want everyone to feel the joy that's on these pages, the intricacy that is these plot twists and crazy things
Yeah.
like this. Like, it's so worth it. Like, when I tell you, is reading all 8 books in Throne of Glass a little bit of a labor of love? a little bit, but also it will change you. We were just talking about it this morning. We probably read it last summer and we were like, man, those
Really miss them.
characters. I know. It's so
I have to share that I said to you, I was driving down the freeway probably 3 days ago. I was passenger princess, and I'm just, like, looking out the window thinking that I really miss Manon. Just
it's Manon.
m oh god.
Did you know that?
You've told me before, but
Okay. Biggest disclaimer ever for the future of this entire podcast. We don't listen to audiobooks. Okay?
I mean, I said I listened in the beginning of this episode, but I listen to audiobooks for autobiographies.
We maybe will get into it. I just have a preference of reading fantasy physically or at least on a Kindle because I like to see it on the page, especially with any intricacies that are going on. I really like to reread sentences, things like that, go back, flip back and forth. I just like doing that. So I don't listen to the audiobooks and I make up my own pronunciations sometimes, and Sarah certainly does.
As we've just heard. And I'm very confident, and I tell Jillian, "No, this is how it's said," and I'm wrong every time.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Okay, so this is the funniest thing. Like, I hope you enjoy like how ridiculously wrong Sarah and I can be sometimes. Like, give us a little bit of grace. Like, I know we're just baby fantasy readers, and this is what I'm saying. Like, if we get it wrong, give us a little bit of grace. We're sorry. We'll correct. We'll correct.
We're not serious people, so
So
if you're
true.
looking for somebody that's gonna get all the facts right every single time, like, we're not your deep divers, we're not your dictionaries.
Yeah, if you're looking for somebody who's going to remember every detail from 3 books ago to connect it to this book, you might not get that here. We might totally forget and be shocked about it when the plot twist
We
happens.
wanna be your friends reading that book. I saw a TikTok the other day of a girl, she was like, "You guys, I see TikToks every day of like, I have this theory. What about this? What about that?" And she's like, "I just finished the book and I really don't remember what happened. I mean, I know I liked it and I know I'm in love with that character, but I don't know what happened." I was like, "I feel you, girl."
And listen, I love seeing the theories afterwards. We'll talk through some theories. We are on TikTok, so like we will see things like that. We will see theories. We send them to each other all the time. We'll bring it in as we like see those things and it makes sense too. And we hear accurate pronunciations on other social media platforms or whatever. But I try to look it up. I do, but sometimes we're wrong. And then sometimes we just
Also, with Throne of Glass, I tried looking something up to help me with my pronunciation, and I ruined the entire series for myself. So now I never do again, and now I'm very confident making up my own names because of that experience.
yes. And I think you'll learn. So, like, part of this podcast structure, we are going to kind of talk through here really quick, like how we're going to record these podcasts as we like read these books. So, typically, each book will be around 3 episodes. We'll have a first episode that will be somewhere in the like first half ish, maybe first 60% of the book, depending on how much happens in the first, chunk of the book.
Yeah, if we're a Kingdom of Ash book, maybe we're doing thirds.
Okay, yeah. We'll split it up accordingly to the book because obviously you're not going to split up One Dark Window and Kingdom of Ash the same way. But like, I think in general, it's going to be around like 50% of the book is the first episode, and we'll talk through initial thought processes, world building, character introductions, what our thoughts are, predictions for the rest of the book, crazy things like that, which is really fun because I don't think like you kind of do that automatically when you're talking through a book. But something I love about Sarah and I is we're kind of constantly analyzing like everything people are saying, like, is that going to come up later? I bet that comes up later, making very strong, false sometimes predictions for the rest of
Like,
the
this
book.
doesn't matter, that definitely matters, and it's like, no, that never comes up again.
So if you're looking for all accurate predictions, you're not going to find it in the first episode. You might find all wrong predictions in the first episode, but it'll be fun. And if you want to read along with us, then you can read the first half, kind of speculate with
Mhm.
us, wonder if those theories are going to be right or wrong or not, and then read the last half of the book. And then when we record that episode, we'll talk through plot twists, character development, if there's future books, predictions for the rest of the books, things like that, like where we think the story is going to go, storyline, all that kind of stuff, which is really fun. And then we'll have a third episode or the last episode. And because we already talked about this, Sarah and I send voice notes back and forth to each other when we read books. We still do that. even if we're recording
Yes.
the episodes, we still constantly are sending voice notes in the moment as we're reading them. So like an
Mhm.
emotional moment will happen, we'll send each other a voice note as the
Read,
plot twist is
talk,
happening.
read, talk.
The last episode will be us live listening to all of our voice notes from that book and reacting to them, giving our overall ratings for the book.
My favorite thing about those episodes is, for me, obviously, I'm obsessive, so when I finish a book, I wanna be back in it. I'm already missing it. I'm already having FOMO.
I
So
know.
these episodes, these last episodes for each book, they turn into almost a mini reread,
Mhm.
and they're very emotional rereads. It's a really fun thing to listen to as you've just finished. It almost slightly puts you back in that world really quick, reminds you the journey that you just went on. They're very fun.
Yes, extremely. So that'll be the last episode. We'll go through our final ratings, things like that, and that'll kind of wrap up that book until whatever is going on next. Usually, if it's the first in a series, we'll probably be reading the next in the series after that. So, for context, if this is the first episode you're listening to, welcome. I'm so excited
Hello.
you're here. This will be releasing at the same time as two other episodes, which are going to be Songbird and the Heart of Stone and When the Moon Hatched, which we both read last year or in the fall of this past year. They are only going to be the voice note episodes from those books. So we won't have episodes 1 and 2 from either of those books available that are launching with this one. This will be in a little bit of a different format, but going forward, we will have more of the read along episodes available for each book from now on.
I think that takes us into what are we reading this year? I'm so excited. I
Me
was
too.
so excited that last night I made us a spreadsheet. We have already read One Dark Window. It was our last book, if you don't count rereads, that we read in 2024.
Yes.
Wow, such a good book. Hooks you really early on. So highly recommend it.
If you're new to fantasy too, it's also a great one to start with. Like Fourth Wing's great, Akatar's great. One Dark Window is also really great. It's a very easy to understand magic system, easy characters to fall in love with, easy story to follow, but great plot twists, great suspense. Really awesome book. So
If
like
you've never read a book with smut, it has really tasteful spice, like, not a lot, but it's still exciting. It's still a good book.
yeah, we both talked about it during it and we didn't really miss it. I think it was the perfect amount for the book that it was. I didn't wish there was more spice, you know? I think sometimes spice for spice sake, this was spice for plot sake, and I like that.
Mhm. Same. So we read that last year. We are obviously in our rereads right now because we are both very excited for Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. So Fourth Wing Iron Flame, we are currently reading Iron Flame right now. We will be releasing content for Onyx Storm. And then following Onyx Storm, we will be releasing content for One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, which that's book 1 and book 2. So that will be following Onyx Storm. And then other things we're reading this year, release dates in order to be determined, but books we're reading are, you have Kindred's Curse Saga. Am I saying that right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's the Spark of the Everflame story.
3 books are released, book number 4 to come, and we are reading Quicksilver with book number 2 to potentially be released this year. The rest is to be determined. We have so much on our TBR, a lot of things that you all, meaning our friends that read books, are DMing us about. So we've got a list going, but Kindred's Curse Saga, One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns, and Quicksilver are guaranteed reads for us in 2025.
Yep, and for the Kindred's Curse and for One Dark Window, you don't have to have read the entire series to listen to that episode. You just have to have read that book or be reading that book with us to listen to the episode. So no need to like go through and be like, well, I can't listen until I read all 3 books. No, you can listen now. You can listen with us, speculate with us as we read through the series together. We really encourage you to let us be your book besties going through this journey with you. It's gonna be great.
Yes, yes, yes. That's it for now. We're thankful you're here. We have a lot of thoughts to share.
It's going to be a crazy year. I'm so excited. I'm so glad you're here. And those are my thoughts.
For now, those are my thoughts. See you next time.
Bye.